Hello, friends, and welcome back to another episode. So, today we're going to be continuing the little mini series Body Language with Barry, and today we're going to be talking all about your menstrual cycle. Now, before we delve into that, there's a few things I want to say. First off, I love the feedback of the series. I swear, there are a few DMs that come in every single day like, I love this series. I learned something new. Thank you for being so thorough in the explanation. And I'm like, finally something you guys are loving again. So super excited about that and the feedback. Second, I have something for you. Listen, if you are on my email list, I have already sent this to you. But if you are not on my email list, you need to run, not walk to the show notes, and download the cycle syncing cheat sheet. Yes, you heard it here first. I finally created a cheat sheet for you all. And let me just say this. I'm so happy I have finally completed this. It's something I've been wanting to do for honestly like over a year now, but I just never sat down to like kind of pull it all together in a way that was simple and concise. I'm so excited it's finally done. The first page is just you have your cover, and then the first page is explaining what cycle syncing is. And I know most of you know what it is, but there's also two really great diagrams for you to be able to see the phases of your cycle and what your body is doing during this phase, but then also what your hormone levels are like. So you can see that rise and fall of, the follicle stimulating hormone, the luteinizing hormone, as well as your estrogen and progesterone. I do not delve into the specifics as it relates to what those hormones are doing and why they're relevant. We will touch on that today. But on the next page, I actually give you, I think it's a 4-step process to implementing cycle syncing for your life. And then on the following page, you'll find a grocery list and, of course, suggested workouts. Because if I had $1 every time someone said, what should I be eating in sync with my cycle? And then I send them the Instagram post that breaks it down. And then they're like, oh, well, what if I don't like this? Or, oh, what if I'm allergic to that? And I'm like, it's not that deep. Like, you can curate the list however you want. I would really be rich. I'd be rich. I'm talking like Jeff Bezos rich. So, like I said, if you're on the email list, you should be able to check your emails now from an email. It's hello@optimizeyourflow.com. That should have been sent to you. And if you're not on my email list, then you're going to need to go ahead and head to the show notes. And inside this cheat sheet, you will get a sneak peek at what I have been working on. I'm not exactly sure what date this will release, but I am working on a cycle syncing course called Cycle Syncing 101, okay? This is by far the best course I've put together ever. Better than anything I've ever done. And I'm so excited because it is so specific and it answers so many questions. People are asking me about cycle syncing in menopause, cycle syncing in pregnancy, cycle syncing for ADHD, cycle syncing in cannabis. This course is actually going to be covering all of it. It's called Cycle Syncing 101, okay? The first module, you'll have your welcome, and then from there, we talk about what cycle syncing is and how to implement it. The second module actually breaks down implementing for your lifestyle. The third module is the optimization portion, which is literally how to cycle sync if you are a stay-at-home mom, how to cycle sync if you're an entrepreneur or if you're a working professional, if you're a teacher, how to cycle sync as a parent, how to teach your daughters how to practice cycle syncing when they're going through school, and there's those highs and lows and navigating that. And then the fourth section is called what about cycle syncing, and insert your topic. And I have pulled the topics y'all have been asking me about, and there's over 27 of those topics in here. And I'm just so excited to be creating this course and finally just getting it out there. Cause it's in my brain. It's been in my brain for years, but I just like needed to like kind of laser focus. So with that being said, I'm going to shut up, but if you get the cheat sheet, you'll actually be able to be the first on the wait list for the course. And before you ask me about prices and all of that, I don't know yet. Okay, this idea literally came in a dream, and I woke up the next morning and it was still on my mind, and I was like, okay, we're gonna keep doing this. And like, this idea came to me at like 11 p.m. at night, and then I was disturbed from my sleep at 3 a.m. and I woke up at 4 a.m. and like got out of the bed and just started like writing down everything for the course and like putting it into the new course platform, which, okay, I'm done. I need to like shut up and get on topic. So today we're going to be talking about your menstrual cycle and what you really need to know about it. We're going to talk about the key hormones at play. We're also going to touch on the phases. We're also going to talk about how that relates to the vaginal microbiome, your thyroid, your liver, and your gut, your metabolism, all of that stuff, because, over the past few weeks, we have talked about so many different things. We've talked about the vaginal microbiome. We've talked about your hormones. We've talked about and touched on, how different aspects of your body works, but like, how does this all work as it relates to your menstrual cycle? So with that being said, go ahead and grab a beverage in your notebook. If you don't have one, like, please get one. Like, this is going to be the mother load. Like, this episode is the queen mother of all episodes. So let's get into it. Yeah. Okay, so what is the menstrual cycle? The menstrual cycle is the monthly series of changes that a woman's body goes through in preparation for the possibility of pregnancy. Once a month, each month, the ovaries will release an egg, or an ovary will release an egg in this process called ovulation. Sometimes 2 eggs are released, and that's why we end up with twins, but that is neither here nor there. That is what the menstrual cycle is, okay? There are 4 key phases of your cycle, and I'm just going to run through them really, really quick because I think most of you know these by now if you've been in the community for a while. So phase 1 is your period. This is menstruation. The phase 1 of your cycle is called menstruation. This is when you're on your period and you're shedding the uterine lining, the endometrium, okay? And the levels of estrogen, progesterone are fairly low during this stage. The second phase of your cycle is called the follicular phase. So post-period, pre-ovulation. This is actually when your energy levels and hormone levels of estrogen begin to rise. And during this phase, what's really important to note is that your body is actually stimulating egg growth. Okay. This is also where after your period, your uterine lining begins to build back up. The third phase of your cycle is called ovulation. She is the main event, okay? And this is the release of an egg from an ovary mid-cycle. Your estrogen will peak just beforehand. The luteinizing hormone will peak just beforehand. And your testosterone will also peak during this time and then drop shortly thereafter. And that would lead us to the fourth and final phase of your cycle called the luteal phase. Now, what I want to say about the luteal phase is this can be broken down into 2 sections by itself, your early luteal and your late luteal. Your early luteal phase honestly mirrors ovulation when it comes to your energy levels. However, the hormone levels are a little bit different. And then as you're getting into that late luteal phase, as most of us know it as PMS, this is when you're going to be shifting a lot energetically and emotionally, but also hormonally. And that's because this is when your estrogen levels will actually be lower, and usually progesterone levels are also lower in the event that you do not conceive, in the event that the egg is not fertilized. Now, I want to take some time to actually touch on the hormones throughout this, because a lot of times people are like, well, how do I know when I'm in which phase? What causes these phases to ebb and flow and fluctuate and change? And it all comes back to your hormones. And just a quick reminder, if you don't know why your hormones matter and kind of what their role are, you definitely want to check out the first episode in this series. I've gone ahead to link it in the show notes for you, but that's where we break down, the role of hormones and really what hormonal imbalance is versus hormonal balance and harmony and all of that. So with that being said, we're going to delve into 5 very important hormones. 4 more than 5, but I do want to give an honorable mention to the 5th hormone, and you'll know which one. So let's start with some of the lesser known hormones that are actually vital to your cycle. First and foremost, the follicle stimulating hormone, also known as FSH. This hormone actually stimulates the growth of ovarian follicles in your ovary before the release of an egg from one of the follicles at ovulation. It also can increase the estrogen production from your ovaries. So it's actually really important to know this. And if you gone ahead to download your cheat sheet, you will see that the follicle stimulating hormone kind of seems like it's not doing anything when you're on your period, but then right after it begins to increase, and then it actually decreases quite a bit post ovulation. So that's what we want to know there. The second hormone that is lesser known but still vitally important is the luteinizing hormone, also known as LH. LH carries out different roles in both halves of your menstrual cycle. So bearing this in mind, what you really want to know and understand is that in the first week to 2 weeks, so when you're on your period and then post period, your luteinizing hormone is required to stimulate the ovarian follicles in the ovary to produce, female sex hormones such as estrogen, specifically estrogen. Around mid-cycle, there's going to be a surge in LH, and this surge in LH will actually cause the ovarian follicle to rupture and release the egg from the ovary. Obviously, we know this process as ovulation, right? For the rest of the cycle, so post ovulation, phase 3, and then when you're in that luteal phase, okay, the ovarian follicle forms something called a corpus luteum. Okay, the LH stimulates the corpus luteum to produce progesterone, which we know is required to support the early stages of pregnancy if fertilization occurs. So LH is pretty important in the first half of your cycle and the second half of your cycle in phases 1 and 2, as well as in phases 3 and 4. And that's what you want to know. So again, we've just touched on some of the lesser known hormones that are vitally important, okay? FSH and LH. Now, let's go ahead and talk about your old faithful estrogen, and I want to touch on progesterone, and then we'll touch on the honorable mention. Listen, by now, I think we all know that estrogen plays a key role in all aspects of our health, but especially as it relates to your menstrual cycle. So here's what I want you to know. First and foremost, estrogen is one of the 2 sex hormones commonly associated with women, okay? In addition to that, there are 3 main types of estrogen. There's first E1, which is estrone, and this is the primary form of estrogen that the body makes after menopause, okay? So it's not really relevant to your menstrual cycle. But then there's E2, estradiol, which is a primary form of estrogen in your body during your reproductive years, and it's the most potent form of estrogen. This is the one that we are constantly navigating and really hoping stays in balance and really stays in check. Then there is estriol, which is E3, and that is a primary form of estrogen during pregnancy. Okay, so the main one we deal with is called E2, and it is really the most potent form. This is the one that's constantly rising and falling throughout your menstrual cycle. It is also the one that really supports your ovaries when it's releasing an egg, okay? And it also thickens the lining of your uterus to help prepare it for pregnancy. So that is something else that you want to keep in mind. Now, let's go ahead and delve into progesterone. Progesterone is mainly secreted by the corpus luteum in the ovary during the second half of your menstrual cycle. We know that it plays a really important role in the menstrual cycle and in maintaining the early stages of pregnancy. So during your cycle, when the egg is released from the ovary at ovulation, okay, the remnants of that ovarian follicle is going to actually form a structure called the corpus luteum. And this is what actually releases progesterone. The progesterone is what's preparing the body for pregnancy in the event that the released egg is fertilized. If the egg is not fertilized, then the corpus luteum actually breaks down and the production of progesterone falls and a new cycle actually begins, right? So that's why it's important to know kind of these 4 hormones, but I do want to give an honorable mention to testosterone. Most women are like, no, I don't have testosterone. You do. Just like men, even though they're like, oh no, I don't have estrogen. You do. Stop it. That's kind of how I feel. Testosterone is actually a key aspect of producing your estrogen. How wild is that? And oftentimes we just think that it's the male hormone. No, sis, it helps to actually produce estrogen. It's also really useful for the growth and repair of reproductive tissues. And so that's why I wanted to touch on it really quickly, because your testosterone does also kind of peak just when your estrogen and luteinizing hormone are also peaking throughout the menstrual cycle. And so I just want you to kind of have that association. Now that you understand, those hormones, and I know that we did like a crash course into this. If you want to know more about each of these hormones, make sure you take the period masterclass, because we delve into it a lot more and there's a lot more visual aid for you. No, this will not be covered in Cycle Syncing 101. Cycle Syncing 101 is only going to be about cycle syncing. It is not going to talk about, like the stuff we talk about in the period class. So just want to put that out there. But with that being said, I think it's important that you understand those hormones and how they're constantly rising and falling throughout your menstrual cycle. That rise and fall is essentially like a breakdown of like phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, phase 4. And there you go. Again, if you need a visual aid, make sure you have the cycle syncing cheat sheet. And with that being said, let's go ahead and talk about how all of this is relevant to your vaginal microbiome, but also what it has to do with your thyroid, your liver, your gut, and so on and so forth. So when you are having a healthy menstrual cycle, right, your vaginal microbiome more often than not can actually stay in a balanced state. Okay, and she's thriving. But when there are changes in your period, oftentimes there are also changes in the vaginal microbiome. And when you are able to read your period and identify what's going on with that, you can kind of reverse engineer what may be happening in the vaginal microbiome. Case in point, I know a lot of women who deal with yeast infections, and the yeast infections are actually associated with, too much candida present in the vaginal microbiome. Well, as that's happening, that's also associated usually with more painful periods, estrogen dominance, things that are inflammatory, right, in the body. So when you can kind of understand the symptoms of what's happening with your period specifically, you can kind of correlate and begin to connect dots to other areas of your health, which is why they call your menstrual cycle your 5th vital sign. Now, with that being said, I know not everybody can connect those dots as easily as I can. I just want to give you a starting point to really emphasize why you want to understand your cycle on a deeper level and understand your body's language on a deeper level. Now, you might be thinking, well, how is my cycle related to my thyroid or my gut or my liver? How is all of that interconnected? For the sake of time, I'm actually going to oversimplify this. But essentially, okay, your liver is going to help make your period better or worse. The way that your liver functions, okay? Your gut health is going to help make your period better or worse. If it's in a functioning state, right? If it's in an optimal state, if you are doing things that are aiding your gut, then you're going to have better periods, right? But if you have crappy gut health, then you might have a crappy period. Or if for whatever reason, your hormones are imbalanced, or perhaps you have something like a chronic condition. Let's say you have a thyroid condition, right? The hyper or hypothyroidism, that's all going to impact your menstrual cycle. Now, the reason it's connected to your cycle is because your cycle, right, your PMS symptoms, your period is the first place you will actually be able to see certain things. It's going to be the symptoms associated with your menstrual cycle that can be linked to other things. A lot of times people don't realize that your period, right, is this report card. Whether or not you're in an optimal state of health can be shown to you through your skin, for instance, right? But we're talking about your period. So if you notice once a month, every month, you're getting extreme bloating, especially when you're PMSing, right? And then you notice that same bloat might carry on post PMS into like ovulation. Well, that's going to tell you, hey, I need to work on my gut health. Hey, I need to get checked out for like a thyroid condition, right? These things will tell you physically, right? Those symptoms will tell you what's going on or what could be going on in areas you may want to focus in on. So without like overdoing it in this explanation, you want to see this connection between your cycle and the vaginal microbiome, because the healthier your vaginal microbiome flora, the healthier your cycle probably will be, the better experience. The healthier that vaginal microbiome flora, because your vaginal microbiome is the basis of your health as a woman, the better off a health you'll probably have as it relates to your gut or your thyroid or things of that sort. Now, I could get into the nitty gritty and talk about, estrogen metabolism as it relates to the liver, but this series is really just trying to give you all the meat and potatoes, for lack of better words, of what you need to know in short and sweet format. So I hope this kind of helps you understand things. And if you think like, Barry, I need more details about this, just DM me on Instagram and be like, more details, please. I need to know about what my thyroid function has to do with my menstrual cycle. We'll delve into that, but I want to spare you a bit of time because I know I can get a little long-winded. I also want to remind you that, listen, if you have not gotten your hands on the cycle syncing cheat sheet, sis, get into it. It is in the show notes. And like I said, I'm just so excited for you to have this resource available. Like, I expect to see y'all printing it out. Like, if you print it out and tag me on Instagram, I'm going to make sure that I reshare your stories. For real, for real. But also, like, I want you guys to get excited for the Cycle Syncing 101 course because, like, listen, it's just good. Like, when I say I'm so excited, like, I have not felt this focused since I launched the Flow Academy in 2020. Okay. So that's how you know it's good. As always, I'm sending you big love and flowy vibes, and I'll talk to you soon.